I want to invite you to let your imagination go wild for a moment. Imagine you're out on African safari. You want to see a rare rhino while you still have the chance. You're so excited about this that you've ignored your safari guide. You've broken away from the group. There's a clearing of trees and brush that you go and you hack through, just hoping that you'll finally see the rhino. You've almost given up hope, but you go and you make lots of noise, you hack through the bush. On the other side, you finally got what you want. There's a huge gray rhino and her calf. Unfortunately, you've just broken a couple of other rules. Stay downwind, don't get too close, don't startle the rhino. She's pretty angry. She's snorting, she's pawing the ground. She's about to come at you at 40 miles an hour, all 2 tons of her. What do you do? Real-world leaders face a situation very much like our avatar out on the African plains. They face crises that are big, that are very, very dangerous, that are right in front of you. They've had warnings, but they're terrible, terrible at doing what they need to do to get out of the way of the rhino. Now, you've all heard about black swan crises. These are high-impact, highly improbable crises. We're going to talk today about gray rhinos, which are high-impact, highly probable crises. Now, you can't say they don't exist because they're the wrong color, because whether they are black rhinos, white rhinos, Javan, Sumatran, or Indian, they're all gray. It's very hard to ignore them. You've probably seen them before: a financial crisis, a humanitarian disaster, a drought, an epidemic. They're things that you recognize and you know can happen again. It's not a matter of if, but when a gray rhino is going to happen. Take the 2008 financial crisis, for example. Some people called it a black swan, but that's actually a dangerous misconception. The warnings were all there. You heard reports from the Bank for International Settlements, from the FBI, from the International Monetary Fund. Highly respected leaders warned that a financial tsunami was on the way. Yet the people who had the power to keep it from happening didn't do anything. So if we think of it as a black swan, we've excused that inaction. So the biggest crises that we're facing today are not black swans. They are gray rhinos. They are resource scarcity, water, food, and energy, extreme inequality, extreme weather that results from rising greenhouse emissions and climate change. We need to be more resilient, to find a way to address these. So I want to offer to you today the Safari Guide for how to keep from getting run over by a rhino. Our first rule, as we heard before, is stay downwind. Right now, our incentive systems, our economic system, our taxes, our political system are all set up to encourage short-term thinking and short-term behavior. But what we really need to do is find incentives to encourage the sort of long-term thinking and the long-term policies that will let us address problems while they're still far away on the horizon and not dangerous yet. The second thing we need is a GPS with an autopilot and a breathalyzer. People do better responding to problems when they have a map, when they have a clear set of behaviors that they can do to get out of the problem. Look at firefighters, at emergency room doctors, people who are highly trained, who've practiced what they need to do to get people out of trouble. If our avatar out on the prairie had practiced throwing brush in front of the rhino, running in a zigzag, if our avatar had had more experience with that, he'd do much, much better getting out of the way of the rhino. The reason we need autopilot and a breathalyzer is that human nature is the biggest obstacle to keeping from getting run over by a rhino. Look at the climbers on Mount Everest who knew that there was a safe time beyond which they couldn't stay up on the mountain. They ignored it. They were so excited to reach the top of the mountain, the rare rhino, that they died as a result. So we need to put in some automatic systems that kick in with a breathalyzer, metrics that tell us when the alarms are flashing, and prevent us from making those same mistakes. Some examples might be capital adequacy ratios that adjust up and down with the markets, or a requirement that when the economy booms too fast, you're required to pay down debts instead of increase spending. The third rule, as we heard before, is don't stand still. Doing nothing is not an option. Muddling through and kicking the can aren't real great alternatives either. So unfortunately, most of the time what happens is we don't get a chance to keep the rhinos on the horizon until after we've been trampled. Look at the Great Depression. Glass-Steagall got put in place afterwards, and unfortunately it took irrational exuberance to get rid of it. Look at the Netherlands. It took the flood of 1953 and nearly 2,000 deaths for them to say, hey, we need to upgrade our system to protect us from the kind of flood that only happens every 10,000 years. We're in that place right now. We're still recovering from the 2008 crisis, which means we have an opportunity. People are aware of the rhinos around us. So my challenge to you today is to keep from mistaking the herd of rhinos all around us for black swans. That would be a sure way to be trampled.